Today's podcast is presented by Podgo. Podgo is the easiest way for you to monetize your podcast, providing podcasters with a flat rate for ad space so you always know how much you get when you include an ad from Podgo. I recently joined as a member, and you can too. Apply today to become a member and immediately be connected with the advertisers that fit your audience. That's podgo.co at podgo.co.
And please put unprofessional development in the "How did you hear about Podgo?" That will give us a little finder's fee. Thank you.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to a very fun episode of Unprofessional Development. I'm Tudisco.
And I'm Mealey. And today we have with us Dr. Casey Jakubowski, which is a mouthful of name. Thank you. He's giving me the thumbs up because I pronounced it right. Maybe because I went to school with and had a slight crush on Phyllis Borowski. Okay. Shout out to you, Phyllis Borowski. Oh.
No relation.
No relation. But anyway, we got Dr. Casey Jakubowski with us. And so we like to have people kind of give us their biography in a different way. Okay. So we're all familiar with the food pyramid. It's changed and whatever, big bread, influences, the makers of the food pyramid.
Big bread?
Big bread, yes.
Oh, yeah, so shady deals with wonder.
I mean, the Stroman brothers were way before the Koch brothers, whatever those guys are that influence politics.
Wait, Doctor, do you have a carb-heavy joke?
No, yes. I don't.
Yes, I was going to say this book better bear fruit today.
Thank you. Nice. There we go.
Teased with it.
Yes. Woo. Okay.
What we're doing today. We're punning.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a very punny episode.
It is. So if your education pyramid now, instead of a food pyramid, kind of build us your education biography pyramid, like what's at the bottom and what are some other pieces and all that. So go for it.
Thank you so much, Mealey, and thank you so much, Chris, for having me on. I really appreciate this. I would say my foundation was, of course, growing up in the 90s before the standards really took over and corrupted everything. So the testing has been truly the fats and sugars of my career because it's not good for you.
Right.
And not only that, but if I had to say the best part, which of course is coffee, because as we know, as a teacher, you need to have coffee. In my EduMatch book, Thinking About Teaching, I have a chapter on coffee, tea, and hot chocolate.
Nice.
Where I talk about specifically supports. I would have to say my coffee, my tea, and my cocoa have been my parents, my brother, my sister, my wife, my relatives. You know, my grandmother, who grew up during the Depression, she had to drop out of school before she could become a teacher. And I remember her crying when I graduated from high school, and I said, "Grandma, I'm going to go be a teacher." And she just started crying. And to this day, I remember that.
Okay.
So my teaching career is for Catherine Mahler, my grandmother.
Oh, that's sweet. That's sweet.
Yeah, it is. I would say the bread or the foundation or the carbohydrate of my career has definitely been how many times I've changed different jobs. For those of you who are listening, if you are contemplating changing your career, go for it. Because, bread is good. Bagels are awesome, especially if they're from the greater New York metropolitan. Just like pizza in Chicago is completely different than pizza in New York, but it's still pizza.
Yes.
My wife just texted
wrong.
me, no, it's not. It's a lasagna out that way.
Wow, that's a little truth in that. Go ahead.
It's a tomato
But the
pie.
meat of my career, the meat, has always been supporting others and moving them from okay to outstanding. I truly believe that we've got a severe problem in the United States where we waste so much talent. We waste kids' talents because there are teachers who are desperately trying to help them, and the school system is literally imploding around them. We've got teachers whose talent is being wasted because they're being told, well, you can only do the standards.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, the standards, those really shouldn't be the ceiling. They should be the floor. You should be tripping over the standards.
Right.
But if that's something that's a problem, then it's the system.
Yeah.
So, and the last place that I think talent is being wasted is the amount of paperwork that we have to do to tell somebody what we're going to do before we actually do it.
And after we do it.
Yeah. And, I remember, Bill and Chris, if you don't mind, I remember writing lesson plans as an undergrad going, these things are going to fall apart the minute somebody sneezes.
Yeah. Right.
You know,
and they do.
Oh my goodness. You walk in the door and a student walks up to you and they go, "Hey, Mr. Casey or Mr. Bill or Mr. Chris, something happened last night." And they tell you a story where you sit down and you need the counselor.
Right.
You're like, "Oh God, how can I help?" I mean, you know, we can't get you through stoichiometry and chemistry today. We need to give you food, shelter, clothing, you know, and my heart goes out to the educators, especially in urban America, where their students see violence every day.
Yeah.
You know, I am very fortunate. I grew up in suburbia America, south of Buffalo. Ergo, I am a longly standing Bills and Sabres fans. One of those two teams breaks my heart. The other one usually does okay.
There you go.
But man, I tell you, you hear stories and then you go to rural America and there are parts of New York State where 8 to 15% of rural counties in New York do not have running water.
Wow.
So when we're out there and we're being told we've got to be competitive against the rest of the world, in Singapore, they feed kids.
Right.
In Norway, they feed kids. In France, they feed kids.
Yeah.
Here in America, we're like feeding kids. Bah, let's buy another island. Whoops, did I just give away my political leanings? Sorry.
Yes.
But, you know, truthfully.
We feed kids, they'll grow up to be lazy.
But they're, you know, it's funny. Somebody on Twitter the other day said, well, you know, we shouldn't give kids accommodations because they'll abuse it. And I'm like, have you ever tried to take a test with dyslexia?
Right.
You know, and I tell you, my hero is my brother who overcame some learning disabilities in school. He now does some great work at the local community college. He has an amazing wife, 2 beautiful children, a solid, steady career job. My parents are my hero because my mom and dad dealt with that, and they beat the school up to help my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, this idea that we shouldn't help people because they're going to get lazy bothers me.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to be lazy. People are just really trying to survive out there. And, you know, I think that one of the areas that I'm doing in my coaching and my consulting career is I'm trying to tell people that imposter syndrome narrative that has been foisted or shoved down their throat from teachers going, you're not a creative author, you can't do math, science isn't your thing. That's nonsense. And I just saw something the other day where the IEEE, which is the engineering like brainiacs of the world, told the person who invented the orange box that became the, quote, black boxes on the aircraft, he was wasting his time, and for him to stop and do something more productive. So my response to that is, no, you do your thing, because people are haters out there. So to quote Miss Swift, shake it off.
Oh, my. She is quite a prophet.
The T-Swizzle.
T-Swizzle.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I recently, actually speaking like kind of what you're getting to there, what you've gotten to. I'm not a huge reader. I used to be a really big reader. Now I just mostly read Twitter and other interweb stuff, which is still reading, by the way. But I read this book called Essentialism, which is the disciplined pursuit of doing less is the subtitle to it. And it really kind of spoke to my heart. And I'm like, oh boy, if I could somehow get this into the hands of my administrators and people that are in charge without seeming like I'm shoving, my agenda down their throat. I'm like, it's, so important. Rather, talking about the standards, the standards literally, and we've had this conversation on here with the issue with the standards. My biggest challenge with the standards is when they are created, in my imagination, and I think this is part of the truth, is you get, whether it's math, science, whatever. So you get like however many people that are in the room creating the standards, and they go, well, we've got to include. Well, yeah, but we've also got to include. And then the third guy's like, well, it's like all these people are like, well, we can't not have them learn. And then now all of a sudden they've crammed your year full of like all this stuff that they feel are super important, rather than getting down to like, oh, let's just learn like the scientific method, like core things. And then we don't need to worry about all these details that when kids do or don't go into the science field, they'll learn about. I highly recommend the book, Essentialism for those of you that are aspiring minimalists like myself. It's a little bit preaching to the choir, but it really is getting down to, okay, what are the important things that we need to do, and how can we get rid of, like you said, the fats and the sugars. I've got to do a lesson plan. It's got to have this many things, and then I've got to, after the lesson plan, do some kind of other thing that I need to do, and all these types of things that just eat up time and energy, as opposed to focusing on making sure the kids are cared for and making sure the kids are learning.
You're absolutely right. And, I think there's a great book out there by Mandy Froelich, who's also an EduMatch author. It's called Reignite the Flames. And she talks about what finding your passion is all about. Mm-hmm. It goes to Simon Sinek's Finding Your Why. Why are we engaged in teaching? It's really about critical thinking. It's really about the idea of creating people who aren't helpless. Yeah. Your librarian is an expert in, if you liked the Harry Potter series and you want to learn more, they can find you books and they can help you find books. What I as a teacher need to do is not be the sage on the stage. What I need to do is be a coach.
Yeah.
And, if you look at coaching and if you look at teaching critical thinking, you need to allow students to do their own thing. Control is an anathema to citizenship. Control is a poison to critical thinking. Yeah. I talk about in my Thinking About Teaching book how I had a student who hated social studies until he saw on the History Channel something about tanks in World War II. He was a mechanic, and he was shocked that the American tanks kept breaking down. And he learned about how the Germans presented the Allies with a gift by making their tanks vulnerable to rear shots. And he also learned about the Russian tanks as well. And one of the things that he was shocked about was how the Polish Air Force during World War II, those pilots made their way to Europe to fight. And when the British didn't want them to fight, they fought the British to fight. And then were totally forgotten about after World War II. Wow. And you know what happened to this kid who hated history? He loved it.
Right. He was very curious. Right. Because he found something that piqued his interest.
Yes. Because he wanted nothing to do with learning about the nonsense of history to him.
He didn't need to know the names, dates.
Yeah. But, here's the other thing. When we started talking about.
But shouldn't he color in maps? Wouldn't that be good?
Well, no, because here's the thing. I never did that in my classroom. And I think if you have kids color in maps, you need to rethink how to teach geography. The National Geography Society, the C3 teachers, and the Stanford History Education Group. By the way, none of them are getting a cut of this or giving me a cut. I thoroughly believe that they teach good critical thinking skills. You need to see maps. You need to feel maps. You need to enjoy maps. I tell you, if you have a relative with the National Geographic maps in your basement, take them, laminate them, put them in your classroom because they are the most amazing things in the world. Also, here's another thought that I believe, and this is something that I truly, in my heart of hearts, believes. Garage sales are your best friends, ladies and gentlemen, because you can teach everything from junk you get at a garage sale.
Oh, my goodness.
Seriously, you can do excavations by burying cups in the ground to teach stratification. You can teach stratification by the way things have moved from the 60s, 70s, 80s to today. Old newspapers, old magazines, all of that stuff can help you teach phenomenally well. And you know what's really great about it? You don't have to overplan a lesson because you say to students as young as kindergarten, play. Tell me what you see. And they'll come running up to you with a picture of an elephant and go, it's an elephant. And you'll go, absolutely. What did you learn about the elephant? They're big. Exactly. How big are they? I don't know. Well, let's go look it up together. And some way, somehow, we beat that out of children until they get to us in the high school and they're like, oh my God, school, the only reason I want to be here is because I really find that person very attractive in second grade studies. Or they don't care about nonsense. They want to know about authentics.
I would watch a TV show or a YouTube channel called Garage Sale University. I would love that. That would be a lot of fun. And you could just take, like you said, you can take it to math, you can take it to science, you can take it to history. What's English? I'm sure you could take it there.
Oh yeah. If you get commercials and advertisements in the 1950s and have kids look at them, man, they get shocked real quick. Oh, let's see how they try to convince us here. Oh, 4 to 5 doctors smoke Camel cigarettes, kids.
I actually saw, it was a Winston ad. I don't know if this is real or fake. There was a Winston ad, and it said, oh yeah? Cigarettes cost a low birth weight? Don't you want an easy delivery? Smoke a cigarette.
Well, and then there's also the idea of after World War II, the U.S. federal government was trying to keep as many women out of the workforce as possible because they didn't want a depression. So they actually teamed up with Red Book and Women's Day and Good Housekeeping to promote this idea that mom should stay home and that dad should be doing this and with the kids. But, the really scary thing is that you look at the TV dinners and you look at the convenience dinners and how there is almost a direct one-to-one correlation between two working parents' exhaustion amongst the two working parents and the overscheduling of children and the fact that it is now very inexpensive to buy food at drive-through places, but it is nutritionally ridiculous.
Yeah.
I also want to share with you that why is a bag of chips $1, but a pack of fruit is $5? I could never understand that. And I think we need to look at how all of this was influenced by decisions because, we talk about curriculum, we talk about teaching, we talk about everything. It's a decision. How many times has a really good teacher who doesn't quite, quote, fit the mold not been hired by a school district? How many times somebody who wants to do this work been told, I'm sorry, even though you've gone to school for 4+ years or 6 if you need a master's like you do in New York, we don't want you because you don't fit what we want. Or how many times has somebody said, I think we need to move. We've got to do what's right for the students. And everybody goes, oh, God, there they go again. Why? Can't we just do our thing?
Yeah.
As a profession, I think we need to re-engage in our ethics. And I think the way we redo that is we talk about our conflict dragons. And those are 4 areas that I've invented to create a conversation with schools about what is their goal, what is their data, what is their process, and what is their value. The deeper folks get into the values, the harder the dragon it is to tame. We know data. Data doesn't lie. What happens is
hold on one second now.
We ask the wrong questions.
I'm gonna throw the flag on the data doesn't lie. Just 1 second. Okay, data lies all the time. Anyway, go forward.
Well, I was going to say we asked the wrong question. So if we don't ask the right question, then we get lying data and their data lies.
Okay.
Now, I'll tell you this. Standardized tests do not tell the story.
No.
They lie.
Right.
They totally lie.
Right.
But one of the areas that I believe is that if we ask good questions, such as instead of can a student pass an 11th grade U.S. history exam, we ask, do they really understand what it means to be a citizen? Have they engaged in citizen action within their community to create a crosswalk, to do something to reduce the amount of students who are suffering from unemployment? That to me is real work. Have they all gone out and gone to a local stream and cleaned it up? That's real citizenship. That's also real science. That's also real everything.
Right.
But instead what we do is we ask them about questions regarding erosion on a test. Well, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. And the data, which I will concede it lies with the way it's constructed.
Just say it.
If you look at the process, nobody wakes up and goes, I'm going to intentionally blow up a student's life. I'm going to make it so miserable that they drop out of school.
Yeah.
Nobody has a goal to intentionally fail students. Yeah. But at the same point in time, what is the value? And we've been underfunded as a profession for so long. And we've been undervalued as a profession for so long that what we literally have are people burning out. Not only do first-year teachers and young teachers and new to the profession teachers leave after 5 years, but those students who found their superhero have lost them.
Right.
And it is so heartbreaking when they go up to you at the end of the school year and they go, please don't leave us.
Mm-hmm.
And you go, I have to for my own good.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, we don't know who's going to defend us.
Yeah.
The fact that students need an adult to defend them at a school, that frightens me. That frightens me that principals and vice principals and other teachers are so overwhelmed in their own lives that they can't see what damage is happening in their own schools. everybody talks about how bad middle school was. Everybody talks about how bad high school was. My new book that's coming out, Cog in the Machine, I talk about 4 types of bullies. 2 of them are accidental. 2 of them are intentional. And so one of the areas I want to share with everybody on this podcast is this. I was a victim of bullying. My parents did everything in their power to try to help me. The principal thought that I needed to learn how to toughen up because the world was going to be tough. Yeah, it's going to be tough, but you know what? Any other place in the world, the way advisors treat doctoral students, the way teachers are treated by administrators, the way teachers treat each other, if that was done by a fraternity or a sorority or done by a sports team, it would be a hazing and an automatic death penalty to that group for a year.
Yeah.
And we do it all the time because, well, let's give them the benefit of the doubt.
It was easier for that principal to say that to you than for them to resolve the problem, because it would take a lot more work for them to resolve the problem than it would just to kind of tell you to toughen up. Am I too far off from the truth?
Well, and I also think part of it is we're asking people in education.
I'm not saying it was right, but I'm saying that was probably driving his decision to some degree.
Yeah, and we asked them to do too much. You know, you've got to evaluate every teacher 5 times during the year. You've got to have meetings with central office about your data. You've got to deal with the frequent flyer kids. You know, you've got to deal with curriculum updates. You got to order crap. You've got to respond to 8,000 emails.
And you really have to watch your budget because we're not making that much.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. And
how many times have you stepped away from your classroom because you got to call the bank about something? You know.
Yeah. And how many times have people thought about this where, you know, what's on the menu in the teacher lounge is more important to some folks than what's going on in their own classrooms. You know, and I hazard to say that there are a lot of teachers out there who are trying their best, but I think it has become a situation where they don't even know where to begin anymore because they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
You know, and to me, I think what we really need to see is this conversation of how do we re-engage ourselves so that we're not bored in our own classroom? How do we re-engage when, you know, we have the highest number of per pupil per teachers in the world compared to everybody else that makes way more than we do.
Does that make us rich as teachers because we have got so many pupils?
Oh, heck no. How many times have they done the babysitter thing, right? I actually did this exercise.
Look at me. I've got more students than all the other teachers in the world. I'm the best. Sorry, I'm being a little sarcasm there.
Yeah. I love it. I love the fact we pay $40,000 to a group of people with a master's degree when my students who were engineers wouldn't even accept a job for less than $70 plus $10,000 signing bonus. So I was like, okay, you guys are going to pick up lunch all the time. And we're going to go get some lobster.
My first year teaching, one of the teachers on my team was getting her doctorate. And so she would miss class about once a week. Like she wouldn't be in school because she'd be going to her doctoral classes. And she worked this out with the principal. And so the way they did it is they dispersed all of her kids to our rooms. So literally at least once a week, often more, but at least once a week, I would have to have like the 32 kids in the desks and then 15 kids sitting against the back wall of my classroom. My first year teaching. I also didn't have any windows. It got smelly.
It did.
Did you have middle school students?
Yep.
Try doing middle school during summer school with no air conditioner.
No, thanks. I'm good.
I'll pass on that.
But I'll tell you, one of the best things I ever did, and this is a really cool thing, was we went to the library, we went to the Pioneer Cemetery, we went to the local river, we went to a whole bunch of different places in this rural district I taught in upstate New York, and we did a field experience. And instead of repeating 6th grade for the students, we prepped them for 7th and 8th grade. And you know what was the amazing truth? One of my students he was a challenge. But he found an unrecognized veteran from the War of 1812 buried in the Pioneer Cemetery.
Oh, wow.
This kid, whose grandfather had served during Vietnam, got really upset as a 7th grader and said, this isn't right. We got to do something about it. And I said, okay, I'm going to make up a name here to protect him. Yep. Mike, what do we want to do? He said, well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to call my grandpa. And that night, I have a phone call in my phone from the American Legion commander going, what do I need to do to help you? And so this young man, who I literally thought was going to wind up dropping out of school, wound up getting a veteran recognized. And he scraped by the skin of his teeth, right? He managed to get through school. He's now a successful small business owner.
Right.
And one of the coolest things of the world is...
And that's not code for drug dealer, right?
No, it's he repairs engines.
That's
He owns
awesome.
his own repair shop. Yeah. He's
That's good
wealthier
work.
than I am with a doctorate.
Seriously.
You know, but plus he can also fix my car, which is awesome. I think he owes me one. But you know, one of the things that was so cool about it was because we said, run with this. We didn't say, well, we need you to meet these standards. We need you to do this. We need you to do that. The level of research he had to do, because remember, this is a War of 1812 vet.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is the National Archive.
Mm-hmm.
This is the U.S. Department of the Army. It was a haul of a project.
Mm-hmm.
It was a haul of a project. And, you know, I, to this day, am so proud of him because he could have just coasted.
Yeah.
But he didn't.
It's the Overthrowing Education Podcast, and I'm your host, Batsheva Frankel. We all know that great education should be engaging and inspiring, and Overthrowing Education aims to be just that as well. Every episode starts with a fomercial. It's a commercial parody for fake educational products we wish were real, followed by a discussion with passionate educators making a difference. While most discussions are playful, even within our serious and informative chats, the real fun comes when I make my guests play the 5-minute game show at the end of the interview. Each game show is written especially for that episode's topic and guests. Every episode provides practical ideas and tools as well as food for thought. So join me as we overthrow education.
So if I can just bring this back to the world of like the teacher's perspective then. You know, speaking of coasting, I see a lot of teachers who are just coasting too, right? Like once you kind of get past that hump of like the first few years where everybody's struggling, not on admin's radar, it's so easy to just phone it in as much as possible and just focus on survival, right? And I know you talked before about going from okay to outstanding, right? So how do you think a teacher can do that? First off, how can a teacher know if they're just okay, right? And then how do you think they can improve themselves without shaking the boat enough to get in trouble?
I think a teacher could recognize that they're just okay if they're bored walking into their own classroom. I think a second way is if they hear their voice more than 50% of the time that they have the students.
Not on virtual schooling. Let's give everybody a mulligan for that one.
Yeah. And, you know, honestly, this pandemic, we were just trying to get through Maslow's bottom. Mm-hmm. There was no way we should have even been remotely thinking about. And by the way, there was no learning loss. There was way different learning going on. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of students realized when they were at home what it actually takes to run a home, what it actually takes to be part of a community. You know, our local scout group did an amazing thing. They did a cleanup of close to 80 miles of highway because they all went out and they did it socially distant. They cleaned up the trash. The county that I lived in was thrilled because they're like, yeah, we don't have the crews anymore to do this. Thank you guys for cleaning up all these back roads we could never get to. And, you know, I think the third way that a teacher knows that they're just okay is if they've got time for side hustles. Like, if they're not truly stressing about their day job, if they are really stressing about their side hustles, then I think they're just
So if they have a podcast?
No, because that's critical.
Okay.
That's critical. We're communicating. We're doing the professional development that we all wanted, but we could never get. Okay. Right? How many times have we all sat in the professional development and thought, how much are they paying this person? I could do this. Right. You know what the definition of an expert is, right? It's somebody from 50 miles away. The definition of a fool is somebody who's local.
Nice.
So,
nice. You know, that's true.
Yeah. And, you know, when I give keynote speeches, one of the points I talk about is that I want to re-inspire people because they know we've got the knowledge. We've got the bachelor's degree. We've got master's degrees. We're not stupid people. What we've been done to us is we've been handcuffed. We've been handcuffed that you have to do this because this is the control methodology.
Right.
Instead, I think what we need to think about is the second question that Christopher's going to ask me is, how do we know how to move to outstanding? We've got to do one new thing a unit. And we've got to release control to our students for at least one unit. And you've got to tell your administrator, my classroom is going to be messy. It's going to be loud. It's going to look like chaos is going on. And that's perfect. Because except for education and prisons,
yes,
you go into local libraries today or you go into a local workplace, there is no silence. There is a constant buzz of communication going on. There's a constant exclamation. Stuff's flying through the air if you happen to be in the air. Engineering group, marshmallow launchers are a thing in engineering for second-year students in college.
Right.
We've got to stop putting students into rows with desks.
Yeah.
We need to create spaces where they can spread out on the floor, do concept mapping, and then construct. And if there's no budget for it, again, I go back to the garage sales. You can get a lot from the garage sales. It doesn't have to be an authentic can opener, but boy, oh boy, oh boy, could you use a can opener from the 70s to teach a whole bunch of different concepts?
Yes, like tetanus. You can learn about.
Yeah.
You can learn about tetanus.
Yeah, but, I love that you talked about that because not only does the nurse there, but every student should know first aid and CPR. That's just
that's excellent. I will say this though,
world learning
related to that. So I know I've touched on other episodes of the podcast. My room has nothing but bar stools and pub tables and chairs that you might find in a waiting room of a doctor's office or something like that are much more comfortable. And I've got
like a coffee shop.
It looks like a coffee shop, except that all the tabletops are have whiteboard contact paper on them, so the kids can do the math on them. And it took time, and it took me driving around, but I spent almost no money on it. I go on Facebook Marketplace and you'll be surprised, which is basically a garage sale. You'll be surprised when you say to someone who's selling something for $10, $20, even $50 or $100, would you like to donate this to my high school classroom? And they're like, I was just trying to get it out of my garage and maybe make a couple dollars, and I didn't feel like putting this thing in the car and driving to the local Goodwill. But if you're willing to come here and get it, and you're a teacher, it's yours. Come and get it. You know what I mean? Not everyone will say that, but you'd be amazed what you can get in your classroom if you just go on Facebook Marketplace, see something that you think would be a benefit to your students and say, hey, would you mind donating that to my classroom? You know what I mean? I'll write you a stinking receipt if you want me to,
Well, and, I think part of it is that a lot of the schools, they have to account for the state auditors, and I used to be one of those state auditors. They have to account for the money. They have to say where it goes, and garage sales doesn't cut it.
No.
But I think if you're a creative administrator and if you are a creative person, what you could do is you could look at getting materials for somebody's classroom, like sheet protectors. Sheet protectors with white pieces of paper inside of them make the ultimate seat whiteboard. I think another area that I'm shocked and amazed about is sticky notes. And I know people can't see it, but I'm holding up a stack of sticky notes. There are probably in most people's homes, I would say, enough office supplies to start a small business. 3-ring binders, sticky notes, pens, papers, whatever. One of the ways that maybe as a society we need to look at this is, what the hell can you honestly do with a paper clip? Well, for a paper clip, you can do a lot, especially if you bring a bunch of paper clips together. You can have students work together to build different products using paper clips. Because it's $5 for a box of 100 of them. You can make a tower. It's really easy. So, but I also think one of the other areas, and you hit the nail on the head, is most people don't know what they don't know. Right. They think, my God, my taxes are so high, the schools, they must have everything. And if they walk into the schools, and this is nothing against the custodians, many of them are literally keeping these buildings together with spit and shoe leather polish and maybe chewing gum. Right? And, thank goodness we're finally now starting to pay attention to the fact that you cannot correctly teach in a school where it's freezing because the windows aren't double paned, and in the summer the brick retains the heat. I remember working with a large urban school district in a summer school. The temperature inside a classroom was 105 degrees.
Yeah.
How can you, that's
No.
OSHA doesn't even allow that for adults.
No other organization that has as many people as employees would ever keep the buildings in the condition that school systems keep the buildings in. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You talk to people that like, or have a business that literally has, 150 employees. That's not even like a big business. You have 150 employees. You're not going to be in that 80-year-old building with no heating and air that works appropriately. You'll figure out a way, because no one would work at a widget factory, whatever it is, without in that kind of condition. It would not happen. Yeah. Sorry.
Right, exactly. And, you look at the food, right? And I was absolutely floored that one of the richest districts in New York had 19 different offerings for lunches, and the poorest had one. It was a slice of cheese, 2 slices of bread, a slice of what apparently looked like ham, and a little bit of lettuce.
Some part of the pig at some point worked its way into that sandwich, yeah.
The spam beast.
Yeah, 3 things of carrots, 2 pieces of cheese, and milk.
Oh, 3 carrots? Oh, they're fine.
Yeah, 3 little slivers of carrots.
Oh, yeah, no, that's great.
They called that a balanced meal. And, it's funny because
a vegetable.
Yes, ketchup is a vegetable.
Yeah.
Could be a fruit.
I found out something crazy. They also gave sugar cereals to the kids in the morning. No wonder why they're crashing at about like 10 o'clock, So, I mean,
well, those cartons of orange flavored sugar water.
Yeah. As an
those
adult,
are good for them.
I know. As an adult, if we go to some, coffee shop, pick your poison wherever you go, and you get a sandwich at 10 o'clock, you're usually thinking, whoa, I'm going to need another cup of coffee.
Mm-hmm.
But, I think what's really scary about it is that we need to, as a society, value what we're doing with our students. We ask for the best on the cheapest. And I don't know about you, but if my doctor said, yeah, that x-ray machine is fifth-handed, I would look at him and I would go, time out. Can I please go to some place where they're not even using x-ray machines, but I don't know, CAT scans to look into my body, and we have fundraisers for everybody. And now the schools have to do that. And parents actually have to form foundations to be able to buy things for students. It's crazy.
So I'm gonna get on my soapbox and I'm gonna tell you what I think is at the root of the problem. The money's gonna be invested, whether it be, and I'm not the first one to say this, has been saying for years. You're either gonna invest it in the schools, or you're gonna invest it in the prisons. It's gonna be one or the other. Okay. But the issue is, when I put the 50,000, 5 million, $2 billion into the school system, I won't see the effects on the prisons for 12 years. And the person who makes that decision is elected on either a 2-year or a 4-year cycle. So he's a lot more reelectable if he can put the money into making it safer to go down the street today rather than 12 years from now. And when he would say, well, there was all this crime, and he says, well, don't worry about it. I've invested in the schools, and 12 years from now, the crime rate will be like 10% of what it is right now. The people aren't going to vote for him again. So I'm just throwing that out there. I don't have an answer to that dilemma, but I know that it's a part of the equation.
It is, but I think part of it is we've lost the ability as educators to tell our story. Yeah. We've lost the ability to have our narrative mean something. And here's the reason why. I think one of the best points that we need to talk about is communities that have quote unquote high crime rates. It's economic desperation. It's loss of jobs.
Right.
And the other area is it's loss of opportunity.
Yeah.
Freakonomics had such a great chapter in either that book or the Super Freakonomics book, where they talk about the economy of crime. And they said that nobody's making money except for the ultra rich criminals.
Yeah.
And one of the points that they talked about is that people really who are doing this have entrepreneurial skills. They just don't have the face to go into a bank and ask for money to start up a legitimate business.
Right.
And so I think this pivots to what do you pay attention to, the minutiae or the big picture? Part of it is that as people, we often suffer from too much complex information. Mm-hmm. The internet has made us information rich, but narrative stupid. What I mean by that is you can look at the internet and you can get 70,000 hits on an item, but unless you actually take the time to parse through and wade through, it's really not going to make sense. And as a society, we have become so complex that the TV program called The Good Place hit it on the head in its last season.
Great job.
What do you mean you can't go to the good place? Answer, society has become so complex and we've got such hidden footprints.
Right.
We don't even know what our actions are.
We don't know the consequences. Right. Right. Yes. I'm buying you a coffee because I'm trying to be nice. And meanwhile, I am funding persecution and a third world dictator and child slavery or whatever else it is that I'm doing that I don't realize that.
I buy candy for my classroom. Not only am I establishing patterns of students to reward themselves with sweets, which is, definitely contributing to obesity in America, but I'm also supporting slave labor of Nestle. So
yes,
that's what I get for being nice.
So I think one of the areas that we really need to think about is local, and we have to become localvores. Mm-hmm. We have to also do it's a term where you look at trying to ensure that the food that you eat is raised within 50 miles of where you are. Mm-hmm. I think the other area is buy local, as long as it's not made overseas, because some of these shops are really interesting in they're a local shop, but they sell stuff that's mass manufactured from overseas. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying we should shut down international trade. I really, really like some of the fruits and vegetables that don't grow up here in America. I also love the fact that we've created such amazing cultural exchanges. Quite frankly, our cell phones are not built anywhere near our continent.
Right. And what about your baby back ribs?
Well, I don't need those baby back ribs. You know what I need?
I need my baby back ribs.
You know what I need? I need the person who's making them from the birth of the calf all the way until it hits my table to get paid a fair wage. But I also need to get a fair wage as well. Mm-hmm. And part of that is that we've got to tell people that, we've essentially been living on a dream for almost 40 years because nobody has really talked about costs or consequences.
Yeah.
I should not have to hear another college student tell me that they overslept for class because they were on their third shift of the day trying to meet ends meet. Mm-hmm. We are one of the few countries in the world where we don't value education.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
And it shows.
Yeah. As young teachers, we all had to work over the summer, and some of us had to get a side hustle during the year. Mm-hmm. If you, as somebody who has a degree, want to go into teaching, cost should not prohibit you.
Yeah.
And you and everybody else needs to have safe housing. Mm-hmm. I really believe that what we need to do is we need to have a civilian conservation corps to rehab rural, urban, and suburban environments. And we need to start with our school buildings. But more importantly, we got to get the lead out literally in our communities.
Yes.
And, quite frankly, politicians, I love local politicians. I think they're doing some great work, but they have to have the tough conversations with people who are going to fund them. And to quote Jeb Bartlett and Leo McGarry from the West Wing, is this issue worth and going to cost me re-election?
So that's what I'm saying.
And if the answer is it is more important than me becoming re-elected, we have to do that.
Why do we do what we do? What's the purpose of school? How do we know what works? We don't want to be slaves to data. We shouldn't fetishize pedagogy. We don't want unaccountable, wild, free-form ideas of education that no one can really figure out how they work or if they do. We need honest, sincere dialogue We need to talk about what really matters, and that's our students, and that's how we help them to learn and grow and improve. What we need is a discussion that includes all aspects of education, from philosophy to policy to pedagogy. You can find all of that, including interviews with authors, community leaders, teachers, students, and more on the ClassCast podcast. Check us out at www.classcastpodcast.com, on YouTube, and streaming on all major platforms. ClassCast Podcast, where real education happens.
So you're throwing out a lot of stuff, right? Things we need to do as a society, things that the federal government is missing out on, things local politicians should be changing. So zooming in on just one teacher, if there's just a teacher listening to this and they're thinking like, yeah, those are big things that should happen, but what do I do? So what do you think, like, if you can give like 3 pieces of advice for just the average teacher out there, what would you tell them?
Number one, take a mental health day.
Yes.
If you're feeling it, you got to take it.
Yes.
Because, the spoons, the full water jug, whatever it is, whatever analogy you want, fish, whatever, if you need a day, you need a day. It's not going to hurt your students for a sub to come in. And quite frankly, you may launch a career for some poor kid out of school or some retiree who's trying to make ends meet. Take that mental health day, number one. Number 2, know your students. I'm not talking about by names. I'm not talking about by data. I'm talking about what are their dreams? What are their goals? What are their ambitions? If they're at graduation and they say the only teacher I care about was the one who in kindergarten gave me a hug every day, boo. They should have at least 12, if not 20 teachers that they go, you know what? Mr. J stopped me in the hall one day after we had a horrid loss in volleyball and said, you know what? I know you lost, but wow, did you give an effort out there? I'm really proud of you that you showed good sportsmanship last night. Or, hey, that test, that was not your test. But I know from class, you really, really, really understood the concepts of stoichiometry. We got to redo this, Or if your entire class looks at you and says, yeah, it's worksheet Wednesday. Because I tell you, the students are really sophisticated. Know your students. The third and final thing is be honest. If you are an experienced teacher and you have protection via a contract or whatever, you have to pull your administrator aside and go, look, I know you're under a ton of pressure, but you got to rethink this. This is crazy. And if they go, get out of my office, then go, okay, I'm going to bring a friend next time. And you've got to go in and you've got to say, look, you're not doing something the way we think you could do it best. If you have the opportunity to, and I know you only asked for 3, but I'm going to give you a 4.
Oh, bring it.
I lost count already.
Check in on your new colleagues.
Yes, definitely.
They are in massive emotional, mental crises.
Yeah.
Economic also.
Yeah, 100% yes. I got to tell you something. I remember Mrs. Stryker, Mrs. Cinda Stryker, God bless her for bringing in banana bread for me once a week because that became dinner on Saturday. But also I got to tell you with younger teachers, right? It's okay if you go, what the heck happened? Because I know as one of those young teachers, I came in all guns and glory. And you know what? You cannot move a rock up a hill if it's square and if it's digging into the dirt and it's raining and it's snowing and there's the water.
Yeah.
What you have to do is you have to look around and see that poor little animal and shelter it.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you've got to do. Your job is to survive and help one other person survive.
Yeah.
That's it. That is your goal. When you make it to year 2, then find the pack of the fawns or rabbits or whatever and hide them and shelter them and give them what you need. You should, if you know that you are going to have a rough day because somebody yelled at you, the baby was up until 3 a.m. vomiting all over you, you need to be out because, folks, we are one-time only off-Broadway performers. We are educators. We are scientists. We are counselors. But most importantly, we may be the only thing that prevents a suicide.
Yep.
And I tell you guys, we lost a student to suicide when I was teaching. And I knew that student. And my God, it still haunts me to this day, almost 20 years later, that I couldn't help Tosh.
Yeah.
But I've also been told by college leaders, student leaders at the college, that because I went up to people every day and said, how you doing? I know you're knocking it out of the park in this class, or, I'm so glad you gave that idea in class today that I prevented them from self-harming. Mm-hmm. And this isn't about me, because you know what? It's about them, and it's about their grit, and it's about how badly they hurt day in and day out, and we forget that. Yeah. We forget that as young people, their hormones are going crazy. We forget that they are under immense pressure to be perfect, when in reality, we only need them to be okay.
Yeah.
And how we help them understand how to be outstanding is not through production. It's not by artificial. What it is accepting how they're awesome internally and how they can live their best life. And that is what makes a damn good teacher.
Amen. Amen. Amen.
Yeah. Whenever I have colleagues who are like, oh man, why are the kids doing this? Or why are they acting this way? I'm like, because it sucks to be a teenager. Do you remember being 13? It's the worst.
Yes. Yes.
And we need to have that level of empathy all the time. It just sucks. It just sucks to be them. Yeah. They're angry and they're upset and they're sad. And that's because they're sane. Like, that's just the sane reaction of being a 13-year-old.
Yep. We've said this, I don't know how many different episodes we've said it on. You talked about, like, don't have them just sitting in the rows with the sage on the stage. And I say this to multiple teachers every year when we do our back to school. Our district generally has multiple days of multiple sessions that last multiple hours of professional development. We are sitting in either an auditorium or a classroom 15 to 25 hours before we go back to teaching the kids. And normally on at least one of those days, it's wall to wall from the time you walk in the door to the time you go home, with maybe like a 30-hour lunch. And we'll be in the fourth session, and I'll look at a teacher and they'll look at me and they'll be like, oh my God. Like they're drained. They are exhausted. They don't want to be talked to and taught anything else. And they go, this is, they shouldn't do this to us. And I look at them and I go, this is what our kids do 5 days a week, every week, every day. This is what they do. I said, please remember that when you design your lessons, that this is what the way you're feeling right now is you're wondering why those kids are jumping off the wall in your, like, for us, we have 4 blocks. Some teachers have 7 or 8 blocks. That class at the end of the day that is going, there's always the hardest one to manage. Well, of course it is. You know what I mean? They are stir crazy. They have been traumatized for like 6 or 7 hours. Now this is the last hour. They are just ready to just blow the steam off. So don't be upset at them. Figure out what you can do to make that hour somewhat meaningful to them and not horrible.
Yeah. Meaningful learning, meaningful projects.
Yeah.
Folks, we have just found out from the local EPA or DEC or whatever you have for the environment group that we have one of the most polluted streams near the school.
Yep.
All 5 of us as a team teacher for middle school, we need to design a project to fix it.
Yeah.
Now, here's how we got to do it, guys, folks, ladies and gentlemen. We need team captains. We're going to propose Shark Tank styles, 7 different solutions. We're going to pitch it to a group of community members. The top 3 teams that win the pitch get to absorb the other teams. We're going to go out and we're going to do this. And we're going to hit the science standards. We're going to hit the history standards. We're going to hit the English standards. We're going to hit the math standards. We're going to hit the tech standards. We're going to hit the health standards. We're going to do everything. Are you all in? I guarantee you those 8th grade students are going to be out the door without even wondering where you are.
Right.
Because they want to give back. They are tired of being infantilized by a system that doesn't trust them.
Right.
Yes.
I'm tired of being infantilized by a system that doesn't trust me, by the way, just so you know.
Yeah. Let's not.
And I'm not talking about my wife.
Funny side story. It's just barely related to what we were talking about. We're saying like kids do crazy stuff and how painful school can be. When I was in 7th grade, in lunch, a good friend of mine grabbed me by the shirt and threw me to the ground and started screaming at me.
Oh my!
We both got taken to the counselor's office, and the counselor started talking to him, and he was picking up like a toy on the desk, was like messing with the toy, and like whenever the counselor would like answer a question, he'd just like throw out another question, and like getting this counselor just kind of like talk and work it through and like explain everything, and We stayed in there for a little while, and the counselor said, okay, you guys can go back to class. And we walked out, and he goes, I just got us out of math class. You're welcome.
Oh,
Was
nice.
it because your friend wanted to get out of math class, or was it because really they had a beef with you?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm obnoxious. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. So you had
But
pushed a
also-
button.
Math class.
Yeah. Good job.
And you know, what do we need? We need people who can do math at really high levels. I know of school I taught at, they couldn't give away scholarships for undergrads for math because nobody had the grades to do it. And, you know, why is that? Well, it's because we don't teach math with applications.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, and we don't teach students to do cool things. Like,
Nope.
I know you got to have an architect to redo the school, but if you were to say to the students in your science classes, you're discussing, you know, air currents or humidity, hey, redesign the HVAC system for this entire building. Go. What are you talking about? We're not engineers. No, you're not, but you're in the middle of studying how air currents work.
Mhm.
Go. You know, oh, geez, I don't know about this. Well, every single person, and I'm holding up their phone, has something that is 50,000 times more powerful than the computer that landed on the moon the first time. And we don't know how to use it. We don't know how to make it into a tool. You know
How to use it? We use it to find cats that play piano.
Exactly.
And ping pong.
Yes. And I play Forge of Empires on mine because that's a really cool thing.
Those clans won't clash themselves, sir.
Exactly. But, you know, I also think students know a lot more about about the world because they are playing those games online.
Mhm.
Because they are experiencing different areas. You know, it's really funny because I really hope that the technophobes, I mean the teachers, allow the students to actually do the cool stuff with their phones.
Mhm.
Because if you say to them, this is the problem we must solve today,
Yeah.
you have 40 minutes, go. They're going to go, where do we start? I don't know. I really don't know. And that's the part that nobody realizes, is that the boss doesn't hand you work and already has the solution. You know, that's only in education where we do that.
Yeah.
In the real world, the boss legitimately looks at you and goes, I hired you because you've got expertise in this.
Right. Right.
And I'll say this too, when I allow students to use technology and work through their technology and they show me their understanding through that lens, you can also start to see the gaps in their knowledge and where they're missing things. You can start to see where they're making assumptions about people and things.
Right.
Oh yeah, I'm playing this game and it's nice because, you know, I'm really good at it because I'm a boy, or a girl says, well, I can't do that because I'm a girl. And you can start to start breaking that apart, but you can't even begin that conversation if you don't know what's going on in their head and you don't see how they're starting to process the world, because it's starting to get solidified and we're at a perfect age, like we're teaching them, and they're at a perfect age where they can start to change their mind and challenge.
Ooh. I say, even this discussion for those of you that play these games, and I should have gotten more into it. This one student, you know, he would tell me, he's going to go play. I forget which one it was. But he's like, I'm going to go kill roof campers. And do you guys know what that is?
Yes.
Okay. It's these games where you're in teams or individuals and you're trying to, shoot the other people. And some people go out and about and other people are just, camping
Crouching
on
on a roof with a sniper rifle, taking out people. Yeah.
Right. And you can have a very good philosophical, sociological, and even like get into science, math, history discussion about why should you be a roof camper versus someone that goes not to kill the roof camper. What's the value in being the roof camper versus not being the roof camper, and all these kind of like values that like are literally inside the gaming world, that people have different personalities and preferences and all of that stuff that goes on. That is really a deep discussion when you get into it.
And whether we want to admit it or not, esports is starting to become sports.
It's huge.
And people are starting to make money, you know, playing video games, reviewing video games.
Yes.
Just hosting YouTubes on video games.
More
A lot of
people
students'
watched
favorite celebrities.
This
as
is years
YouTubers
ago
who
when
just
someone
play games.
When someone told me more people watch the League of Legends Championship than the World Series.
Yep.
Wow. And people are like, how can you watch somebody else play a game? I'm like,
oh, it's fascinating.
Sports.
Yes,
It's
that's what
fascinating.
all.
We've
That's
been
what,
doing it for years.
yes, that's exactly what football and baseball is. Even though I love football. Yes, it's exactly.
Or hockey, or whether or not Jack Eichel's going to wind up in the Western Conference or the Eastern Conference.
I've been worried about that.
Well, I do because I'm a Sabres fan. But
Yes.
one of the Buffalo Bills came out and said he doesn't want to get vaccinated.
Yes, Cole Beasley is Cole Beasley.
Yeah.
You some teacher along the way somewhere failed you, sir, because you the words that are coming out of your mouth are not well thought out, nor evidence that you critically think very well.
And this is where I think we need to have a conversation about the whole post-truth and refutational texts, which is an area I looked at in my dissertation. We've got a lot of folks out there who believe online nonsense. Mm-hmm. And the reason why is it just triggers just enough of stuff that they do know that they believe that they're right. And I read this great book called The Death of Expertise by Tom Nichols. And he talks about how people believe they become experts because they can Google something.
Yes.
But, part of it, and this
the
is
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Right, exactly. Ooh, you cited it. Good for you, Christopher. Wow.
Yes.
Thank you. I read it online.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
I'm a huge fan of Dunning-Kruger effect. That's why I thought I could be a good podcaster. Anyway.
the refutational texts, it takes you 30 to 50 interactions, and you have to slowly move somebody. And, Dana Young, who is a professor of political science, talked about it's almost like deprogramming a cult person.
Yes.
And she talked about the fact, I love this on NPR, and sorry, I again let go a little bit of my political leanings there, but she talked about the fact that your family members may have gotten suckered into this.
This is barely related-ish. But are either one of you familiar with how crazy it is to make a pencil and how
There was written. I want to say it was called something like "I Made a Toaster."
Okay.
And it's about a guy just using raw materials by himself trying to build a toaster.
Yeah.
There's a book out there. It's called The Invention of Useful Things, where they talk about paper clips. They talk about forks. They talk about all this cool stuff that we don't even know. And, it's history, it's science, it's engineering, it's technology. Right. It's fascinating.
Yes. Yeah. All right. Well, we're going to wrap it up. I don't think we have time for. Do we want to go into funny stories? Did you want to share a goofy funny story, a silly story? Yes.
The best funny story I can tell you is one day I was sitting at my desk, a newly minted teacher, and the more experienced teacher walked
fresh out of the box.
Yes, fresh out of the box, literally 2 days away from having been hired. Sitting at my desk, all of 21 without the beard and the hair. So I had a baby face at the time. I'm now a grizzled vet of mid-40s. She walked up to me and said, "Why are you in the teacher's chair?" And I said, "Because I am. I'm pleased to meet you." And I started to rise and to shake her hand. She grabbed me by the ear, pulled me down to the principal's office, and she said, "This student's sitting in the new teacher's chair." And the principal rocked back and said, "That is the new teacher."
Oh my goodness.
We became best friends. We still talk to today.
That's hysterical. That's so good.
I know.
That's so good.
I know. Wow. I know. And that just, if you ever think you're going to have a bad year, that's a good way to start off.
Yes.
Almost getting detention for being too young.
Yes. That's nice. That's nice.
My first year teaching or not even first year teaching, student teaching, I went to the library to go print something out. The librarian stopped me. She's like, "You need to sign in." I was like, "Okay." And so I start to sign in. She's like, "What classroom are you coming from?" I'm like, "Mine?" And she thought I was giving her attitude because she thought I was a student. That's why we grow the beard.
Yes.
Well, and
I wasn't a teacher till I was 40, so I didn't have that. I didn't have that issue.
Yeah. No. I think
I did get chastised by when I was in elementary school. I don't know if I've told this before or not, but because I was a wee lad, and I was much smaller than most of the people of my age, and so at my elementary school, for whatever reason, the way they were living the life back then, the teachers didn't have to go out to recess like most of them have to now. They had people that were paid to be outside to watch the kids during the recess.
Budget cuts.
Right. Right.
Man.
And so then, and different classes had different recesses at different time. And so there was some coming in and some going out. And I remember being yelled at when I was in 4th grade because the second graders were, it's like, "You need to go inside with the rest of them." I'm like, "I'm in 4th grade," so he thought I was in 2nd grade when I was in 4th grade. So,
and that's another example of why we need folks to stop being rule enforcers and start being relationship developers.
Right. Ask a question. Right.
Yeah. Hey, are you lost? You
Right.
look like you're lost.
Yeah.
No, I'm going in.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. You know?
Or the cafeteria lady that throws away the kids' food because they're misbehaving. No.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's happened more times than I can count. And you know, the great thing, and I really appreciate Bill and Christopher you taking time with me, is that I have hope, I have optimism, and you know why? Because I got to graduate the first young lady who earned the Eagle Scout near Albany, New York. She also earned the Gold Girl Scout, and I nominated her for the college's Presidential Award for Public Service.
Nice.
When I talked to Miss Tori about what she was going to do, she said, well, you inspired me, and I'm going to go be a teacher.
Nice.
And I said, oh, you're melting my heart. And
Yes.
she said, nope, you helped me since I was 14 in Venture Scouts, and then you were helping me with my Eagle, and I think, you know, there's a lot of Tories out there, and they're going to make a huge difference in the future.
Yes, all hope is not lost.
Right. No, things are not lost. And you know what? We've got to give them space.
Excellent.
And for those of us who need to go. It's okay. There is no shame in going, you know what? I can't do this mentally anymore. I need to do something a little easier.
And if after a few years you want to come back, they'll still need teachers.
Yep. So let's hit some shameless self-promotion before we wrap it up. Tell everyone everything and anything about you that they can buy, visit, anything, anywhere they can hit you. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn, Casey Jakubowski. I also have a Weebly site, CTJ Solutions. I am a consultant, CTJ Solutions. I help move you from okay to outstanding, and I help your teams tame their conflict dragons, which includes data and analytics. I have 2 books from EduMatch Publishing. One's out. It's called Thinking About Teaching, and I actually reveal my best and my worst lesson in it. So please buy it if you want to make fun of me. But I also have another book coming out called The Cog in the Machine, where I talked about how I felt like I was just in a big machine until students really reinforced the fact that I made a difference. And what I realized, and this is so important, is that I want everybody to know that they can make a difference in the world. Hit me up. I'd like to do keynotes. If you cried, I'll come tell. If you laughed, I'll come talk. And if you really want me to go away, I'll be quiet.
All righty. All right. And all the stuff that is going to be in the show notes, all the links.
Yeah, please check the show notes for all those links.
For all that kind of stuff. And thanks again for coming. And thanks for all, your support on, Twitter. Casey is a huge retweeter of mine. And, so
that's why he's here. Okay.
I appreciate it.
Hey. The 50's in the mail, right? On Twitter.
Yes. 50 likes. But, thank you so much for, joining us, and hope you had an awesome time, and gonna follow all these things and do all these things. And as we always like to say at the end, stay unprofessional. Thank you, and stay unprofessional. Stay unprofessional. Stay unprofessional.